Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my attempt at a Gear 13 guide. This was requested a while ago, and I'm going to be talking about some steps you can take to help facilitate your progression from Gear 12 characters to Gear 13. I'm going to be in-game for some of this, but also referring to external websites, SWGOH or the SWGOH Wiki, to help consolidate information. But the main thing we're looking at is like which specific pieces you want to stockpile and what the best resources to use on them are. So throughout, I'm going to be referring to these pieces over here as left side pieces or just Gear 12 pieces. These two pieces as right side or Gear 12 plus pieces, and then the finishers are their own thing. So we got Gear 12, Gear 12 plus, and finishers. The finishers, the unique component is this finisher scrap. Don't get jealous. I have a lot of them over time. We're going to be talking about the main sources for those. And then on the Gear 12 Plus, we have the main piece, we have the secondary piece, both gold, and then we have this kind of, support piece with the purple mats. Core gear, and then purple mats. Those purple mats are also on the left side. So it's kind of complicated, a lot to keep track of, but I have a pretty good page to show you, break down, and help organize this in your mind. So to help us weight the value of each individual gear piece and organize them all, this is a great resource. This is the SWGOH.wiki site. I'm not sure it's fully updated. I'm pretty sure it's not because in the characters list, they have everything up until like Captain Rex and Jedi Knight Cal. So it hasn't been updated as far as characters since maybe middle of this year. So the total uses figure is a little bit off, but it still helps us establish a great baseline based on most of the game of what the most common pieces are. So for the Gear 13 finishers is relatively even. Like each one, as of the middle of 2023, had roughly 80 uses. So they each variety of those finishers, 3 different ones, are roughly similar in value, depending on what you're actually building up. For Gear 12 Plus, there is a clear stratification with this Mark 12 Armatech Fusion Furnace being the most popular piece. If you've felt strapped for this piece, you're not alone because this is by and large the most required Gear 12 Plus piece in the game. Maybe not quite any type of Gear 12 piece because there's one down here that's higher, but that's the most used. The least used are these data pads and these computers. So you might notice those piling up a little bit more, a little bit faster than the fusion furnaces or even the these hollow lenses here. As far as Gear 12, there is an even bigger divide because the most commonly used piece is this Mark 12 Armatech multi-tool, which requires these security scanners. That's 167. And then this little galaxy-looking thing, molecule, atom, whatever you want to call it, Mark 12 Armatech Tactical Data, there's only 44 instances. So these pieces, you might notice them piling up, and they're not a priority target for us to buy in shipments or to farm with those or anything else. And that's why I will show you my stash. I have so many of these right now. Yeah, right now I have 1,577 of this piece. But it's not required for any Gear 12 Plus pieces. It's only that left side piece, and it's only used 44 times in the whole game. By comparison, this is more of a normal piece, this Mark 7 Chewie Bob. I have 323, a little bit higher than the key ones, but still so much less than those Mark 8 design tech salvage things. Back to the overall list. So with these purple support pieces, you'll notice they are also used in the Gear 12 Plus, but not every type. It's actually only 3 different support pieces that are used. These Mark 6 med packs, the Mark 8 security scanners, and the Mark 7 hypo syringes. None of those other support pieces are used. However, there are 8 different types. Each individual Gear 12 Plus piece or just Gear 12 piece has a different one of these. So these are all different, but only 3 of them are used up here. So the most valuable are by far the med packs. Well, not by far. The security scanners are not far behind. Then we got the Chewie Bob syringes. So to figure out how many total scrap we need to finish off every character in the game, this number's a little off because it's not been updated since the middle of 2023, but 404 of these, each of these completed pieces is 20. So that's over 8,000 scraps. You're going to need over 8,000 of these to finish every character in the game. Not that everyone's goal is to finish every character in the game. That's just a baseline of how much you're going to need. Security scanners are behind 293, so just over 5,800 of these. Still a huge amount. I'll look at that in a sec. The Mark 7 Chew Bob syringe, which is third in line for most used, requires 4,000 total scraps to finish everyone. And then dead last, we got this Mark 8 Nubian design. That's just going to be 880 before any of those brand new characters we just had coming in the game. So that's a huge difference. That's a huge difference in value. You're going to have to evaluate as you're buying things. If you're scarce for resources, focus on these med packs and the security scanners for sure. If you're 12 pieces, you're going to need the most popular one, this multi-tool prototype. Each of these completed prototypes cost 30, so this is close to 5,000 of these. For this breastplate, it's close to 4,200 total. And for these, it's just over 3,600. So those are the ones you're going to be wanting to focus on if you're not sure what to purchase in the store and you're not targeting anything specifically. Let me just pull one of those back up here. But the ways of obtaining them is very similar to the support pieces. I'm going to show you the raid equations in a second because that's something that wasn't updated on this site. For everything else, if you focus your eyes right here, this does not change relatively. You can buy these in packs of 20 for crystals for 600 and these packs of 30 for 900. But they do the same value for crystals, same value for shard trap currency, same value for guild event tokens, and similar for energy, except you can only farm the support pieces on fleet nodes for most of them, or the important ones anyway. And then these you're only going to get with normal energy. So that's the main difference there. And then with Gear 12 Plus, we already talked about the differences and how much you're going to need of each, but let's just pull up the differences here. So for this piece, we need 83 or 227 of the prototype. So that helps factor in both your 12 plus pieces on the top right and the finishers. So 227, this is easy, it's times 50. You need over 10,000 of these, over 11,000 of these scrap pieces, which is insane. But for this, it's not required for any finishers. You're only going to need about 3,000, just under 3,000 of them. So a huge difference in how much you actually need of each piece. And then for comparison with the cost, they all cost the same. It's like a class, like Gear 12 plus scraps. You can get it for Guild Event 2 tokens, which I think is a decent value, the 400, 800. Charge Up Store, however, it's 720. I don't like that. I would rather buy Gear 12 and the support pieces with Shard Shop currency. Shipments, I wouldn't buy them with crystals. It's not super valuable. And Championship Store, kind of iffy. That's really expensive. But also you could farm these with fleet energy. So what my solution is, you farm the Gear 12 Plus primary pieces with fleet energy, and then with your Shard Shop currency, you are farming the Gear 12 and the support pieces. So as far as farming with your energy, I like to prioritize farming this furnace because we saw we need over 11,000 of these across the game. So they come up way more often. You also get extra little support pieces, which I talked about in my relic video. They're valuable as extra little relic scraps. By comparison, another Gear 12 Plus piece, this data pad, only has one extra support piece. And the med packs and scanners and the Mark 7 Chew Bob syringes, even though we need a lot of them, they only have one extra piece on the node, so it's not super valuable. And the drop rate is arguably worse. I don't know the exact numbers, but when I'm farming these, I seem to get fewer drops than when I'm farming the furnace. So all signs point to buy these with the Shard Shop currency and farm these on the nodes. Now for the normal energy, your only option for the Gear 12 Gear 13 process are these Gear 12 primary pieces pretty much. So you can farm them here. Just keep in mind what the most common ones needed are and the ones specific to you. This has long been considered a great node because you get a Mark 3 holo projector for Relic 5 scraps, and this is a key support piece. But nowadays I think it's a lot easier to come by. So there's a variety of them. This is not one of the more common pieces. so that might not be the best node to farm. This is very common, and you do get a lot of extra relic scraps, so that's a good one to farm. This don't farm, you barely need any of these. We can't even scrap them for relics. If we could scrap those for relics, CG, please let us scrap those for relics. We barely need them. This one, pretty common, and then there's some on Dark Side too. I think the most popular one, that like crane, that weird tool thing. But yeah, so for your normal energy, you're gonna want to farm those, but also you can farm finishers. Yeah, so there's finishers here, and that might be something you need to do if you're a newer game player, but for late game players, your main income source is going to be the assault battles. And I'll talk about that in a second, because there is still something I want to finish going over the Gear 12 and Gear 12 Plus pieces, and that is raid currency. I recently went over this chart in my shipments farming guide, and this just demonstrates how the Gear 12 Plus pieces are better buys with the Mark II raid currency compared to Gear 12 pieces and support pieces. So if you're confused what you're looking at, this is the cost of currency, how much currency is needed to buy each scrap. So the lower the number on this left side or on this right side, the better. So the best value are these secondary Gear 12 Plus pieces. This stun cuff matches with a furnace, and so whatever you might need as far as support piece, you're gonna notice in the store that it's cheaper. So if you're low on those, this is a great way to buy those. Second best that. Worst is the support pieces, and it's weird because I mean you need so many of these, and they're so cheap everywhere else with currency. The get one, the charge up currency, it's very odd. So I have actually, I admit, I've been buying some of these lately with Mark II because I was stocked with the Gear 12 Plus, but I was getting really low on these pieces and I needed them a lot, so I was buying them. Running out of Gear 12 pieces from the old Sith Raid structure, so I needed the infuse. But if you want to be smart and plan ahead, I think you should exclusively focus on these, and that's going to get you much further. As far as the raid currency, Mark 1 and Mark 3 are irrelevant for Gear 12 to Gear 13. It's only Mark 2 that's going to help you. Actually, the Mark 1 raid currency does help you in some way. You can buy these core gear, as they have been called, like stun cuffs, carbantes, this Mark 10 salvage. But those are, I think, the last of anyone's concerns when it comes from Gear 12 to Gear 13. Because now, with the new raid, people have been stocking up on them. And in the challenges, the daily challenges, you get a lot of these. So you have more of that to work with. But that is something you could do with a Mark 1 raid currency. And they're all pretty decent value. Kyrotech is another like below Gear 12 piece that you will need in Gear 12 to get from Gear 12 to Gear 13. And firing Kyrotechs is pretty annoying. So let's look at the salvage. There's two different pieces. Obviously, I think everyone's used to that by now. We got the shock prods and we got these little computers. They both cost the same in terms of resources needed to get them. 10 energy nodes. The same amount of championship store currency, go to event 2 currency, and then you can buy them with shipments as well. I like to buy these with the get 2 currency, also get 3, which isn't showing here, but that's a good value for them. I don't buy them with crystals, and I do farm this one with normal energy, and this one is the one I buy more from the shipments, because for some reason this comes in shipments of 15 a lot more often than this. I usually see this as 5 at a time. So if you're picking salvage and farm, you want to farm this salvage. Go to light side 7B for this, because you're also going to get some bronzium wiring scrapping. And that's Kyrotech. Kyrotech is a much more broad overall game concern. I think many of you are already been grappling with Kyrotech for other reasons than Gear 12 to Gear 13, and that's just one of the thorns in your side. For older characters, the only Kyrotech you need is from Gear 12 to Gear 13. And Gear 12 to Gear 13 incorporates a lot of stuff we've already talked about. The Gear 12 Plus pieces, you don't need their support pieces or the secondary Gear 12 Plus pieces like these stun cuffs, because you just need a prototype, the hollow looking version of the thing, like these that look hollow. And then you need the finishers, which I think is something a lot of newer players struggle on. And the reality is, if you're a newer player, you're probably going to have to use your Guild Event 2 tokens to buy them, and your Championship Store tokens, and also farm them with energy. Because if you hit that brick wall, it's like, I mean, I would only start farming them if they're the last thing you need, if you have everything else ready, and then you start farming them with energy. But when you're later in the game, you get flushed with these things from these assault battles. There are 7 different ones, and for each of them, there's the Challenge Tier 1, which gives you 5 of each. And each of these assault battles runs once a month, except for bonus events. So if you do the math, if you complete a Challenge Tier 1 on all 7, you're getting 35 of each per month, or 105 total pieces per month, which is enough to Gear 13 2 characters. So over the course of a year, just from these, you're theoretically having enough to Gear 13 24 characters, which is pretty good. But we do get bonus occurrences of these. Sometimes I haven't done it in a while. Sometimes they run twice a day. And Challenge Tier 1 is not that difficult to complete. They recommend Relic level 3 for most of them, but you can get them done with Gear 12 teams. The most valuable team for these assault battles is Imperial Troopers. You can beat the Rebel Roundup and Forest Moon, because this requires Imperial Troopers, and Forest Moon requires Empire. And any old guides on these are still going to work. I can't make guides on them because everything I have is so overpowered compared to what the minimum will be that it won't be an effective guide. Ground War requires Jedi. Jedi Knight Luke is the most valuable for that. That'll get you all the way to the end of Challenge Tier 3 to help you with relic scraps. But Challenge Tier 1, you can probably get away with less, like a Jedi Knight Revan combination or something, and JML for sure. Military Might, you can get by with the standard CLS team, with like CLS Han Chewie, Chupio, C3PO. It might be able to do it otherwise. Clone Troopers work in here too, but that's kind of difficult. Places of Power, you require Sith, but First Order still works, so if you have Supreme Lord Kylo Ren or Sith Eternal Emperor, you're going to be golden there. But I think a Palpatine-led team with Sith, like Darth Vader, and maybe, I forget what other ones you're going to use, Bastille Shan Fallen, like a smattering of those, you're going to get through that Challenge Tier 1. Secrets and Shadows, the hardest one out there, like no arguments. Either Night Sisters or Phoenix. I don't know how well Phoenix is doing with Captain Rex in this, but it's worth a try. And then Inquisitors, which early game players usually put off for a while. They're now accelerated, so it's easier to get to this, but it's not something I think early game players like to focus on. But that is how endgame players get these pieces to add up. Like, I have so many of these, I can't remember the last time I was worried about them for roster development. Yeah, so not to flex or anything, but I got 806 of these, 754 of these, and 490 of these. These, for some reason, seem to be more scarce for me, even though they have roughly a similar amount of total requirements. But still 500, I could have 10 characters to Gear 13 and still have plenty. I don't even know how I have so many, but that's what endgame players, it's an afterthought for them. So if you're asking endgame players about this, they're not really going to know what to tell you. But the big thing is with the shipments, farm the node if you have to, but in the shipments, use your Guild Event 2 currency. Right there. And then the Grand Arena currency. It's expensive, but you're going to need it. But that is why I try to provide a balanced set of teams in my free-play farming guide, because for these assault battles, it just, I don't know, it snowballs like crazy once you get those resources flowing in. The Gear 12 finishers are the least of which. I feel like the CG regrets putting those in assault battles because it's like no one even cares about them anymore after a point. And I think that's it. I think that's my whole take on getting from Gear 12 to Gear 13. It can seem really hard at first, but if you are wise, allocating your resources and picking the specific types of pieces you're going to need more of. Specifically, these furnaces are a huge thing. These med packs are an enormous thing too. And the Gear 12, just picking and choosing should help you get there, and work on those assault battles. We're really going to help you with these finishers. I don't really care about these core pieces anymore. For newer players, I'm sure you actually do still care. Like, that's still a bottleneck, but they start to flow pretty fast eventually. So let me know what you think. If I missed anything, if there are any other helpful tips that people might have, I might even pin your comment. But I would love to hear from you. Don't forget to like the video, and if you have learned something, don't forget to sub if you haven't already. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.